25 years ago, he was betrayed by the one person he trusted most. Today, that same man walked back into his life, with a deal he couldn't refuse. Vincent Delano hadn't looked in a mirror without flinching in over a year. Not because he feared age. At 54, his face had settled into the kind of rough charm that money made appealing. It wasn't the silver creeping through his hair, or the lines etched deep around his eyes. No, it was something else. Something behind the eyes. A rot, slow and invisible, until it suddenly wasn't. He lived alone in a penthouse that overlooked Manhattan like a king peering down from a bitter throne. 2 living rooms. 4 bathrooms. A piano he didn't play and art he didn't understand. Not a single photo on the walls. His assistant, Maura, had texted that morning, 10 a.m., Clayton Wells. Confirmed. He stared at the name. 25 years had passed since he'd heard it aloud. Clayton Wells. The man who'd nearly ruined him. Back in '99, when they were just 2 ambitious nobodies flipping rundown properties in Jersey, Vincent had trusted him like a brother. Until Clayton siphoned off investors, forged signatures, and dumped the fallout on Vincent. Lawsuits followed. Bankruptcies. A near-prison sentence. Vincent clawed his way back up while Clayton disappeared like smoke. Now, he was back, and asking for a meeting. Vincent could have cancelled. Should have. But he didn't. Because curiosity is a form of self-harm. And he had questions that clawed at the walls of his mind at night. At 9:55 a.m., the elevator chimed. Vincent opened the door himself. Clayton Wells looked old. Like a man who'd spent 2 decades fighting storms no one else could see. His once golden hair was a tired gray. His suit, though tailored, hung a little loose. "Vincent," he said, voice hoarse like a man unaccustomed to using it gently. Vincent stepped aside. "You've got 10 minutes. Clayton didn't sit. "I won't waste time. I know what I did. I know what it cost you." Vincent raised an eyebrow. "Do you?" "I'm dying," Clayton said simply. Silence cracked between them like glass under pressure. "Liver failure. I have 6 months, maybe. My son, Peter, doesn't know me. He's 22, smart, angry, broke. I want to leave him something that's clean. Something real. And you think I care?" Vincent's voice was flint. "You should," Clayton replied, locking eyes with him. "Because I can make you richer than you've ever been." Vincent laughed. Not the amused kind. The kind that had teeth. "You tried that once. Look where it got me." Clayton reached into his coat and pulled out a thin folder. He laid it on the marble countertop between them like it was radioactive. A land deal. 47 acres in Northern California. Untapped, unspoiled, about to get rezoned for commercial. I have the rights. You have the capital. Partner with me. 50-50. For Peter. Vincent stared at the folder. The name on the deed. The maps. The legal briefs. It was airtight. And dangerous. "Why me?" he asked. "Because you're the only man I ever respected after betraying." Vincent didn't reply. He didn't touch the folder. His fingers ached from holding still. There was a question humming under his ribs: was this redemption or manipulation? Outside, a storm cloud shadowed the skyline. Clayton exhaled like a man who'd already said goodbye to something. "You don't have to answer now. But you should know, this is real. I need to give my son something besides shame." He turned to leave. Paused. "You ever wonder what it's like to die hated by your own blood?" he asked quietly. Vincent didn't answer. He closed the door. Only after Clayton was gone did he open the folder. The numbers made his heart race. The possibilities made his gut twist. And in the mirror across the room, his reflection waited. That same damn look in his eyes. Vincent sat with the folder on his lap for almost an hour before he moved. Not reading, just staring. Like a man studying the fuse on a bomb he might be tempted to light. Every page inside was perfect. Too perfect. That's what worried him. Clayton had always been the kind of man who could package poison in silk and sell it as salvation. Still, Vincent couldn't deny the numbers. If the land got rezoned, the value would skyrocket tenfold. Even if they sold it raw, the profit margin was obscene. And Clayton wasn't wrong. Vincent had the capital, the lawyers, the political strings to pull. But more than that, he had the grudge. He hadn't told anyone about the meeting. Not Maura, not his lawyer, not even Ellen, his ex-wife who still managed to call once a month to remind him of everything he failed to be. Not that they were on bad terms. They were just over. Like an old song neither of them could bear to delete. At 3:17 p.m., his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. Vincent Delano, he answered flatly. A voice, young, uncertain. Mr. Delano. This is Peter Wells. My father said you might want to talk. Vincent stood without realizing. Did he now? There was a silence on the line. Then a kind of half-laugh. Nervous. Yeah, well. He said a lot of things. Some I'm not sure I believe. Vincent closed the folder. Where are you? Brooklyn. Red Hook. I work at a garage. Of course he did. Clayton's son, turning wrenches. Meet me. Tomorrow. 10 o'clock. Astor Lounge, Midtown. You serious? Peter asked. Isn't that, like, a suit place? You want to talk, you'll be there. Vincent hung up before the kid could reply. He didn't do small talk. Not with ghosts. Not with collateral damage. Astor Lounge was marble and velvet and too quiet before noon. Vincent arrived early, sat at a corner booth, and ordered coffee. Black. No sugar. The hostess didn't even blink, she knew the type. At 10:11, Peter arrived. Tall, lean, with his father's bones but not his father's polish. Wore jeans and a plain tee under a worn leather jacket. No posturing. Just wary eyes. Mr. Delano, he said, sliding into the booth. I didn't think you'd show. Vincent sipped his coffee. You came late. Peter smirked. Had to finish an oil change. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Peter leaned forward. Look, I don't know what my dad did to you. He never talks about it. But if you think this land thing is some kind of scam. I don't, Vincent cut in. That's what worries me. Peter blinked. You think he's telling the truth? Vincent met his gaze. I think your father's dying. And desperate. And that makes him dangerous, even to himself. Peter slumped back. Great. So you're here to warn me. I'm here because you intrigue me. Vincent let the words hang. You're not him. But you could become him. Or not. Peter stiffened. You don't know me. No, Vincent said. But I know father wounds. And the men they build. Another pause. This one heavier. Then Peter spoke, quiet but sharp. I used to think I hated him. Now I just pity him. He's always chasing something that was never real. Vincent nodded. That's the curse of dreamers. They mistake hunger for destiny. Peter looked down at the table. He wants me to take over the deal. Inherit it, I guess. Do you want it? Vincent asked. Peter hesitated. I want a clean start. Maybe this could be it. Or maybe it's just another dirty dollar. Vincent reached into his coat and pulled out the folder. Slid it across the table. You read this. All of it. Bring it to someone you trust. Then call me. If I don't hear from you in 3 days, the deal dies. Peter frowned. Why even give me a choice? Vincent's eyes darkened. Because I never got one. They parted without shaking hands. Peter took the folder. Vincent watched him leave, then flagged the waiter for another coffee. His heart was pounding. Old wounds have a strange habit, they bleed from the inside long after the skin's healed. Peter didn't call on the first day. Or the second. Vincent told himself he didn't care. That it wasn't personal. But by the third morning, he was pacing his living room, ignoring the skyline, his coffee gone cold on the table. His thoughts were unruly, looping through old versions of himself, the men who once trusted Clayton, the men who built empires out of ashes, the men who buried his father and never cried. At 2:14 p.m., the call finally came. I read it, Peter said. His voice was clearer now. Sharper. It's solid. Clean, like you said. But I've got questions. I'll meet you, Vincent replied, already reaching for his keys. They met at the park near Columbia. Neutral ground. Peter was sitting on a bench feeding pigeons stale bread like an old man in a young man's body. "This is where my mom used to bring me," he said as Vincent sat beside him. "Before she left. She liked the quiet." Vincent said nothing. He recognized the weight in Peter's tone. The way a man talks when he's peeling back the scabs. "She left when I was 10. Said my dad was too much fire, not enough anchor. That he'd burn us all eventually." Vincent stared at the birds. Was she wrong? Peter shrugged. Maybe. Maybe she just couldn't wait around to find out. They sat in silence for a moment. "Why didn't you sell the land yourself?" Peter asked finally. "I could," Vincent admitted. "But your father wanted you to have a stake. That matters to some people." Peter turned, skeptical. "And you? What do you get out of it?" Vincent looked at him hard. "Redemption. Or revenge. I haven't decided." Peter let out a bitter laugh. "That's supposed to make me feel better." "No. It's supposed to make you careful." Peter pulled a folded page from his jacket, one of the legal briefs. "You really believe this land is going to change things?" "No. Land doesn't change people. But what they do with it might." Peter studied him. "You ever build something that mattered?" It was a simple question. But it landed like a punch. Vincent thought about the properties he'd flipped, the condos named after meaningless trees, the clients he'd impressed, the fortunes doubled then abandoned. The parties. The women. The silence that came after all of it. "No," he said. "Not yet." Peter nodded slowly. "Then maybe this isn't about your revenge. Or his guilt. Maybe it's about me." Vincent almost smiled. "Maybe." Peter stood. "I'll do it. But I want control. My name on the contracts. I'll work it. Build it right." Vincent stood too. "You'll need guidance." "Fine. Be the shadow. But not the puppeteer." Vincent extended a hand. Peter stared at it. Then shook. A deal sealed not just in ink, but in old blood and unspoken debts. That night, Vincent visited a small bar in the West Village. One that smelled of oak and memory. He hadn't been there in over a decade. The bartender, a woman with tired eyes and a voice like sandpaper, poured his drink without asking. "Didn't think I'd see you again," she said. "I needed to remember," Vincent replied. "Remember what?" He looked down at the amber swirl in his glass. What it felt like to start over. 2 days later, Clayton called. "How'd it go?" Vincent answered without emotion. "He's in." There was a pause. Then a sound, soft, like a sob swallowed mid-breath. "Thank you," Clayton whispered. "You didn't have to." "I didn't do it for you," Vincent interrupted. "This ends with him. You don't get another favor." Another silence. But this one wasn't awkward. It was the sound of an old war ending. Not with a bang. But a slow, tired breath. Clayton hung up. Vincent stood alone, staring out his window. The city pulsed below him, uncaring and alive. But somewhere out there, a young man was about to build something real. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. It started with mud. Real, honest mud, the kind that clung to boots and reminded you that before steel and glass, everything was earth. Peter arrived on the land site in Northern California with nothing but a rented truck, a canvas duffel, and a folder thick with permits. The land was as raw as advertised, 47 acres of wild hills and stubborn trees, breathing in fog like old lungs. Vincent hadn't come. Not in person. He'd wired the funds, secured the zoning connections, and sent a letter through his lawyer. Don't build something just to be seen. Build something worth being remembered. Peter read it once. Then folded it and slipped it into his wallet. The first few weeks were all terrain surveys, legal dance-arounds, and fights with the county board over tree conservation and water rights. The usual bureaucratic jungle. Peter slept on-site in a cheap trailer, worked 18-hour days, and bled into the soil, metaphorically and literally. He didn't call his father. He didn't call Vincent either. But every time he felt overwhelmed, a contractor walking off, a foundation error, a zoning delay, he'd picture both of their faces. One a ghost. The other, a mirror. It wasn't anger that drove him. It was the determination to be more than what he'd inherited. By month 4, the outlines of the first buildings began to emerge, a community center, a local grocer, a set of affordable townhomes. The master plan was ambitious, even risky, not luxury, but accessible. Not just profit, but permanence. Investors balked. They wanted high-end condos, sleek commercial leases. Peter turned most of them away. Vincent, surprisingly, didn't object. Instead, he sent a one-line email, "You're either an idiot or a visionary. Don't stop." Peter didn't reply. But he printed the email and pinned it to the trailer wall. Meanwhile, Vincent watched from New York. He reviewed reports, read every site update, memorized budget forecasts like bedtime stories. But he didn't interfere. Not once. Maura, his assistant, noticed the shift. "You've been quiet lately," she said over lunch one day. "Not like you." Vincent shrugged. "Maybe I've run out of noise." She studied him. "You've got that look again." "What look?" "The, I'm thinking about legacy, look." He didn't respond. Because he was. For the first time in decades, Vincent wasn't chasing the next big thing. He wasn't seducing investors or playing political chess. He was waiting and watching to see if something honest could grow out of all the wreckage he'd once helped create. One evening, Peter received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a black and white photo, weather-worn. It was a picture of a younger Clayton and Vincent, standing outside a crumbling brownstone. Both grinning, covered in dust, proud. On the back, in faded pen, "Before the fall." Peter stared at it for a long time. Later that night, he called his father. No answer. So he left a message, "The buildings are going up. Thought you'd want to know. Maybe you could come see it someday." He didn't expect a reply. He didn't get one. 3 days later, Peter was walking the site with a surveyor when a beat-up silver sedan rolled in. Out stepped Clayton, thinner, paler, but standing. Peter froze. Clayton approached slowly. Didn't want to die without seeing it. Peter glanced at the foundations behind him. The teams. The noise. "This isn't yours," he said, calm but firm. Clayton nodded. "I know. That's why I came." They walked the property in silence. At the end of the trail, Peter handed him a hard hat. Clayton stared at it. "You really doing it, huh?" Peter looked out over the land. "No. We are." Clayton blinked. Swallowed. Said nothing. But his hands shook. Because sometimes, forgiveness doesn't come with words. Sometimes, it comes with a gesture. Vincent Delano arrived on site unannounced. He stood at the edge of the construction zone like a man visiting a graveyard, though the land was alive with movement, steel frames rising like skeletons, concrete mixers humming, electricians shouting through the dust. He wore a dark coat despite the California heat, a subtle rebellion against the environment. Peter spotted him before anyone else. A silhouette in black, hands clasped behind his back, eyes scanning everything. Measuring. Judging. But not in the way Peter feared. "Didn't think you'd actually come," Peter said, walking up. Vincent turned. "You look like hell." Peter smirked. "Sleep's a luxury I can't afford right now." Vincent's gaze moved over the nearest structure, a community kitchen with reclaimed wood accents and solar panels already glinting on the roof. "You chose people over profit," he said, almost like an accusation. "No," Peter replied. "I chose both. Just not the usual people." That earned a short nod. They walked the perimeter together, quiet at first. Then Vincent asked, "Is he still here?" Clayton. "No. He left 2 days ago. Said he'd seen enough." Vincent didn't ask how the visit went. He didn't need to. The fact that Peter wasn't shaking meant something had healed, or been cauterized. As they approached the site trailer, Vincent paused. "What happens when the money runs dry?" "It won't," Peter said. "I've got a waiting list for the first 10 units. Local families. Teachers. Small businesses. And when the next storm hits. The next recession. What then?" Peter turned to him. "Then I'll adapt. Like you did. Only without burning everything down first." Vincent smiled. A real one this time. The kind that cost him something. Inside the trailer, blueprints covered every inch of the table. Notes in Peter's handwriting marked changes, improvements, cost-saving revisions. Vincent studied them, then pulled out a pen and underlined a load-bearing column. "Reinforce this. You'll get hairline cracks in 3 years. Peter looked, surprised. You remember structural load specs? Vincent didn't answer directly. I remember everything that failed. It's how I stayed rich. Peter didn't press. He just nodded, making a note. That evening, they sat on a stack of lumber watching the sun bleed orange across the sky. The frames of future homes cast long, fragile shadows across the dirt. You ever regret it? Peter asked. Which part? Vincent said. All of it. The empire. The exile. My father. Vincent took a long breath. Every time I open my eyes. But regret is a coward's mirror, it shows you everything too late. Peter mulled that over. You think I'm making a mistake? No, Vincent said. I think you're building something I never had the guts to. He stood, brushing sawdust from his pants. I wired an extra $2 million to the holding company. Quietly. In case you hit a wall. Peter frowned. Why? Vincent turned, and for a moment, the men looked tired. Just tired. Because it's easier to fund something beautiful than to build it. Then he walked off toward his waiting car, leaving Peter with the sunset and the creak of settling wood. That night, Peter couldn't sleep. He stared at the old photo of Vincent and Clayton again. 2 young men with ambition in their eyes and blood on their hands, long before the betrayals, the silence, the slow decay of trust. He flipped it over. Before the fall. And beneath it, in a different pen, newer handwriting. May you rise higher than we ever did. Peter stared at the words until they blurred. Because sometimes, legacy isn't what you inherit, it's what you decide not to repeat. The rain came sudden and merciless. Northern California hadn't seen a storm like it in years, winds ripping trees sideways, sheets of water carving gullies into the earth, the kind of rain that tested both construction sites and character. Peter was on site when it hit. Contractors had already gone home, but he'd stayed late reviewing a supplier discrepancy. By the time he noticed the shift in the clouds, it was too late, the heavens cracked open, and the entire site turned into a battlefield of mud and wind. He didn't run. He couldn't. He grabbed a tarp, tried to cover exposed insulation, and shouted into the storm as if volume could make wood stronger. Vincent called just past midnight. You're on the news, he said. Drone footage. The site's underwater. Peter wiped mud from his forehead. Tell me something I don't know. I'm sending a crew. Emergency waterproofing. They'll be there by morning. No, Peter's voice was sharp. We'll fix it ourselves. There was a long pause. You don't have to prove anything to me, Vincent said. I'm not, Peter replied. I'm proving it to myself. Vincent didn't argue. But when Peter returned to the trailer, soaked to the bone, a care package was waiting. Thermal blankets, waterproof gear, protein bars, and a note in Vincent's handwriting. Good leaders don't sleep when their houses are leaking. Peter didn't sleep that night. He patched what he could, sandbagged what he couldn't, and took inventory like a man preparing for war. By dawn, the storm had passed. Damage was less than expected, a few warped panels, a flooded trench, minor setbacks. But the team showed up early, energized. They saw what Peter had done. That he hadn't left. That he hadn't folded. Respect doesn't come cheap. But in moments like that, it earns interest. A week later, Peter flew back to New York. Not to rest. To speak. The city buzzed with its usual electric arrogance, but Peter walked into the Midtown boardroom like he belonged there. He was pitching the next phase, Phase 2. A mixed-use complex tied to sustainability, built with local input. 10 investors. 2 hours. No backup. Vincent sat in the back. Silent. When Peter finished, the room was quiet. Then one man, Rothstein, real estate tycoon, shark in a silk tie, leaned back. This isn't your typical ROI pitch, he said. Where's the upside? Peter didn't blink. The upside is longevity. We're not flipping this. We're planting it. Sounds poetic. Doesn't pay dividends. Peter met his gaze. You want something fast, look elsewhere. You want something that lasts, something your grandkids can point to, this is it. That silenced Rothstein. Which was rare. After the meeting, Vincent pulled Peter aside. You're either very brave, he said, or very stupid. Probably both, Peter replied. But they didn't walk out. No, Vincent said. They didn't. 3 days later, the funding was approved. 15 million. Clean. Bound to Peter's vision. No override clauses. No hostile takeovers. It was a win. A big one. But Peter didn't celebrate. He went straight back to California, straight to the mud and the metal and the noise. Because he knew, real success doesn't come with champagne. It comes with calluses. Clayton called 2 weeks later. From a hospital bed. Doc says I've got maybe a month. Less if I keep being stubborn. Peter listened. Said nothing. I saw the news. You closed the second round. You did it. Peter's voice was calm. No. I'm doing it. Present tense. There was a rasping laugh on the other end. I was a terrible father, Clayton said. Yeah, Peter replied. But you tried to make it right. That count for anything? Peter thought a long time before answering. It counts more than you think. The buildings rose faster now. Steel bones, glass skin. But not cold. Not corporate. There were murals planned for the walls. Community gardens on the rooftops. Spaces for people who had never been seen by city planners. One afternoon, Peter stood in what would be the heart of the main square, watching children chase each other through the half-finished plaza. Their laughter echoed off the scaffolding. And for the first time, he felt it. Not pride. Peace. The grand opening wasn't grand. Peter wanted it that way. No red carpet, no celebrity ribbon cutting. Just folding chairs, a local band, and the people the project was meant for, single moms, teachers, veterans, immigrant families, retirees with stories etched into their faces. The building stood proud in the spring light. Every inch a defiance of cynicism, solar panels catching sun, community gardens sprouting green along balconies, walkways wide and welcoming. A living thing. Not a monument to wealth, but to intention. Vincent arrived last. He wore a light jacket and no tie, a quiet statement from a man once famous for Armani and ego. He didn't ask for the spotlight. He stood in the back, behind the food trucks, watching the crowd move through the plaza like water filling a new shape. Peter spotted him. He didn't wave. Didn't smile. He walked up, shook Vincent's hand, and said, "You helped build this." Vincent looked at him, eyes a little glassy. "No. You did. I just stopped getting in the way." They stood like that for a while. Not talking. Just breathing. Then Vincent reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "What's this?" Peter asked. Vincent opened it. Inside, a key. Not to any of the units. Not to the offices. A plain brass key, old, worn, familiar. "It's the first building your father and I ever flipped," Vincent said. "I bought it back 5 years ago. Kept it boarded up. Couldn't go near it." Peter stared at it. "Why are you giving it to me?" Vincent's voice dropped. "Because you reminded me that a place doesn't stay haunted if you fill it with the right kind of noise." Peter took the key. It was heavier than he expected. 2 weeks later, Peter flew back to New York. Alone. He stood outside the crumbling brownstone on Myrtle Avenue, the same one from the photograph. The bricks were chipped. The windows boarded. But the bones were still there. Strong. Waiting. He walked through the dust and silence and imagined what could be, a youth center, maybe. A co-op. A school for kids whose parents worked too late to help with homework. A place with light in every room. He could hear Clayton's voice in his head. Not a plea. Just a whisper of the men he might have been. He stayed there a long time. Watching. Promising. Clayton Wells died on a Thursday. Quietly. No headlines. No eulogies. Peter didn't cry at the funeral. He just stood by the casket with the same look Vincent had worn once, the expression of a man who survived the fire but carried its smoke in his lungs. Vincent was there too. At the back. Again. They didn't speak. But afterward, Peter walked up, handed him a folded page. A blueprint. "The Myrtle Building," he said. "I'm starting over. Again." Vincent opened the page. Studied it. "You sure you're ready for another war?" Peter's answer was simple. "This time, I'm not fighting alone." Years later, the community in California thrived. Kids who grew up in the townhomes ran the local businesses. There were art shows, farmers markets, late-night jazz in the square. And on one wall of the community center, there was a black and white photograph in a simple frame. Two young men covered in dust, smiling. Beside it, a brass key, mounted in glass. No plaque. No explanation. Just a reminder that sometimes, the best things we build rise not from clean slates, but from broken ground. And that redemption doesn't always come with forgiveness. Sometimes, it comes with a foundation.